going to talk today about the word Thermonoff. And the title of the talk is Perfectly Clear. And there's a couple of different areas where perfect clarity comes in. So if you're not familiar with the word Thermonoff, then you would understand that the way that you're going to understand the meaning of that word would be easy. Somebody gives you a definition. Somebody defines the word for you, which is an explanation of what that word means using other words. And sometimes our definition is going to be from a synonym, another word that means the same thing as that word. So what is another word that we can use for Thermonoff? And by getting that, we get to zero in on our understanding, on clarity about the meaning of that particular word. Sometimes it's the antonym. If I tell you what Thermonoff is not, then you can understand, okay, if it's not that, then there's the whole pivot thing that's in there. Maybe that's what it is, and get an understanding from that. Or we can understand it in context. And these are the ways that we have learned the meanings of all of the words that we are using in our vocabulary. And by the way, the meanings of words change from time to time. In fact, the word literal used to mean literal, and now it doesn't mean literal anymore. And in fact, the dictionary because people have used literal. This is literally the best thing ever. It's like, I've literally done this a million times. No, it's hypothetically or hyperbolically I've done that. It's no longer the meaning of the word anymore. So the context changes, the meaning changes. In fact, the synonyms can change as we are gaining an understanding. And the process that we have gone through all of our lives is to kind of triangulate in and zero in on the meanings of words and the understanding of what it is that we're saying. And we're talking about perfectly clear. What we really want to do is make sure that the idea that I have in my mind is expressed in such a way that the idea that shows up in your mind matches. One of the things that I've mentioned, I think, a few times is that Jerry Troyer, the president of the affiliated New Thought Network, where I'm the vice president, when he took the role, his claim was, we are going to say what we mean and mean what we say. And that's because there are so many times, especially when people who spend a lot of time thinking about the same things together get together, we say something, we know what we mean, but the words that we're using would not be describing that to somebody on the outside in a way that they would necessarily understand it. And sometimes we have to dial ourselves back to basics and to be much more fundamental, because we need to actually say what it is that we mean rather than anticipate that somebody else is going to understand. And that's the first part of Perfectly Clear, is making sure that what we're saying is going to resonate with the person who we're talking about or talking to. In the mid-90s, I spent 88 or 89 glorious days working for a company in Fort Lauderdale called GraphTech. This was a pre-press company. And if you're not familiar with pre-press companies, it's because they're a dinosaur. Desktop publishing came along and completely replaced the need for pre-press companies. My job at GraphTech was to run the desktop side of the business and to take over from the really expensive stuff. It turns out now that the stuff that we were charging $190 an hour for, you can do on an iPhone. So it's not surprising that the industry and that company in specific have gone away. But it was a whole building full of people, and then they had them wearing white lab coats to make it seem like it was really ponderous and official. And they were using Cytek's digital retouch equipment. And the job was basically to take a print production project from an ad agency or from a catalog company or from a direct marketer and take the setup and turn it into films that could be used to make printing plates. And like I said, I was there for 88 days. They got rid of me just before I would have gone on the benefits program. That's a different story. We'll talk about it some other time, or maybe not. And during the time that I was there, probably 6 or 8 weeks in, I walked into the production manager's office on a Wednesday afternoon and I said, "Hey, Tony, Do you think it'd be a good idea to see who on the staff is going to be available for the emergency job that's coming in on Friday afternoon? And you could have sworn that Tony, he would have dropped his cup of coffee, like, what emergency job is coming in on Friday afternoon? Oh my God, what do you know? And he's like all in a twist. And I said, Tony, every Friday afternoon, there's an emergency job that comes in from somebody. I don't know who's coming in, but the chances of us not having an emergency job this Friday afternoon are scant. So maybe instead of running around the shop at 2:30 on Friday to see who can come stay late on Friday or come in on Saturday, maybe we do that now. He was very angry with me because that's not the way they do things. They're not going to anticipate that they're going to have that, even though that was their business model. And P.S., that they made a lot of money on rush charges for people working over the weekend. And the description of what was going on at the pre-press shop and the actual experience of what was going on at the pre-press shop, and they were different. We were not doing what we said and saying what we meant. They were pretending like there wasn't going to be an emergency, even though that was a big part of the business. So back to the idea of Thermonoff. That actually was inspired by a book that I read when I was a kid, and it's called Tunnel in the Sky. It's a Robert Heinlein novel. It was written in 1955, and very briefly, the story is this was a wilderness survival course for high school students, and there was technology that let people open up a tunnel to the sky and go to distant planets and distant galaxies and stuff, and that was how they were colonizing these distant places. So what they would do is they would have a wagon train and they would move the colonists out through this tunnel. And the survival course was about the high school kids going through and spending 2 or 3 days, learning how to do this and then getting some experience at it. And they come back home and everything is fine. And right before the protagonist in the story goes through the tunnel, his mentor, instructor, whatever, says, "Oh, watch out for Stober." And then, off they are into a distant galaxy. Now, of course, the whole story is about what happens when the technology doesn't work and the kids can't come back, and it's a whole Lord of the Flies thing. It doesn't make any difference. And I'm going to spoil part of the end of the story now, but it's been around since 1955. So if you're still waiting for something, and I'm going to spoil this, just let's be clear about that. They go and they have the experience, and there are different animals and different creatures and different experiences they're having, and there's a disagreement among the students, the surviving students, about which one is a Stober, because they thought this one was the most dangerous, but it turns out that the little thing turned out to be insidious and could be much more dangerous. And when they get back, they say to the instructors, who were very fortunate to have gotten their class back 2 or 3 years later, whatever it is, they said, "So what was the Stober?" And the instructors say, "Oh, we don't know. We don't have any idea on that planet what the Stober was. But there's always a Stober. There's always something that seems innocuous, that's dangerous, that you need to watch out for. So we just plant that idea with you so that you're a little extra cautious." Interesting. The word didn't have any meaning until the people who were watching for whatever they were thinking that meaning might apply to show up. And so the meaning of the words becomes a little bit more fluid. So now what we're looking for is clarity coming in from a different direction, not the clarity of what am I saying that's going to mean something, because the instructors, the mentors in that story didn't know what the word meant. But they were planting an idea with their students and wanted the students to come to an understanding for themselves about what their situation was. And that happens to us all the time when we're considering some new possibility, when we get some input from somebody. What did she mean? What did he mean? This thing happened or is unfolding in my life now. What does it mean? Because it can mean what it seems to mean at the first blush, and it can invite us to dig in a little deeper and say, well, what's really going on here? And part of the understanding that we have spiritually is that all of the experiences, especially the new experiences that we're having, are coming in through our lens of experience. So we are always seeing things from the perspective of the way things have come at us or unfolded for us in the past. And it is completely possible that this new experience means exactly the same thing that those other experiences meant previously. And it's completely possible that it means something completely different, and by making an assumption that it's the same as it used to be, I'm going to force it into that little lane, and it's going to mean what I say it means, rather than what it actually could be. This is an infinitely creative universe. It creates everything and can create anything. And it is possible that this new experience that looks exactly like a previous experience is in fact different. And that's where the invitation for clarity comes in. We can go through a process where we let loose our attachment to stuff the way it seems, to stuff the way it's been previously, and open up to a new possibility. And that's the wonderful thing about a meditation and about surrender, is we can get quiet, we can go within, we can be in communion with ourselves, with that divine presence that is within, and ask those questions. Who am I? Who am I? Where am I? What is my next perfect step? What could this new experience mean? Or what could this seemingly repeating experience that I thought I was having from before, what could that mean? There's all sorts of possibilities that are open to us. And when we let go of our attachment to thinking that we know what it is, it opens up that world of possibilities for us to find out, maybe it means the same thing again. Maybe this is that same thing coming around one more time. Or maybe there's some nuance to it that I've never considered, that's never been available to me before. And I can take this to a new level. I can take this to a deeper level of understanding. I can open myself up to something that's brand new. And it works in all sorts of different areas. It works especially in relationships, especially in new relationships where we're engaging with somebody new and we don't know what the meaning that they have in their words is going to be. So there's usually a lot of conversation. So we're getting definitions and synonyms and antonyms and context to understand and kind of help us zero in on what they mean by either that word or that phrase or that experience that they've had previously. Something that's been illuminating for me in the last year of doing the Practical Prayer podcast is not understanding my spiritual practice necessarily, but understanding how different it is from a lot of other people's spiritual practice. Because it's really easy to make an assumption that everybody's doing things the same way that I'm doing, or that everybody could. And there, it turns out, are huge barriers to a lot of people's thinking about understanding what it is that we're up to. So instead of fighting against that or saying, oh, that's no good, it's my opportunity to say, what does that really mean? Who am I in all of this? And how do I express myself? What language, what words, what descriptions do I use to help the person who I'm talking to understand what it is that I mean? How do I get myself to be perfectly clear? And how do I invite in that perfect clarity about what's going on in the world around me to be able to take the next step forward in a way that's going to be meaningful? And I don't know how it's going to happen for you. I don't even necessarily know how it's going to happen for me. It's different for all of us. That unfolding is different for all of us. The word Thermanov was made up this morning by me, and I Googled it, and it doesn't mean anything. So that either means that Thermanov doesn't mean anything, or when you heard therm and you thought maybe it's something having to do with heat or warmth because it's thermal, and off sounded technical or scientific, so it's an instrument of some variety. Maybe you're right. It hasn't been invented yet. Doesn't mean anything yet. But that doesn't mean that it's a gibberish word. That means that it's potential. And when we come to clarity about what it means for us, then we can decide whether or not it's something we want to be engaged in or participate with or not. Then we get to engage with whatever that concept is in a way that's going to bring more of what we experience as good into our lives, either by moving toward it or by moving away from it. So the predefined meanings of the words are not nearly as important as our understanding of what they mean to us and what they mean to the people who we're communicating with, so that we can come to clarity and understanding. So we can use that word or a different experience or a different context to come into more perfect clarity. So that's the invitation for this week, is what is mine to let go of? What are those assumptions that I have about the meaning of the events or the activities, the words that are in my world? And what new thing is possible? What is that newness that I can open up to and allow that guidance and that clarity about what's my next perfect step to happen? And then take it. And take it. And allow the good and the love and the harmony and the prosperity and the health and the vitality and the creativity and all that good to flow into your life in whatever way is uplifting and wonderful to you. Because you deserve it. You are that bright light of God's love right here, right now, and always. And so it is.